How's it going, ladies and bruises? I'm Poppy Sixkilla. Welcome back to the letter. We're Zach, and we are cooking breakfast with Isabella, since she stayed the night last night because she was freaking out. Partially because the terrifying monster thing keeps stalking her, and partially because her colleague Rose was brutally murdered. All good reasons. Let's carry on. Despite the massive effort to keep the mood light with some more chatter, cooking ends up being a mostly quiet affair. Between us, the constant clapping of the knife against the board and the muffled noise from the television I left running, words have become surprisingly difficult to string together. Not entirely unusual. We've had moments like this before, but definitely unnerving with how things are now. I really wish someone else will come knocking at the door. As pleasant as this is, breaking the ice or keeping a conversation going has never been my forte. It's always been Isabella or Rebecca's department. Sometimes Ash's, although most coming from him border on awkward or embarrassing. Speaking of the guy, he never did call back, and I'm willing to bet my entire yearly salary that he fell right back to sleep after that call.
Sorry, Bella. Could you...
Yep, I got it. The potatoes are almost ready, by the way. I turned down the heat just in case. You might want to check on them, though.
I assume that's Ash?
Hold on, I'll be right there. Sheesh, wait up. If you keep rapping at the door like that, you'll break it down. Ash.
Oh, good. You're awake.
Ash has already welcomed himself in when I take my eyes away from the oven. I thought he never knocked anyway. Why was he knocking this time? He's never really been keen with the notion of courtesies when after he's warmed up to you, this guy. All 13 of my locks he broke can attest to that. He's a good fellow, though. Good fellow. Maybe a tad bit standoffish at first glance, but he's trustworthy.
Don't you have work today?
I could ask the same of you. Hey, Z-Man.
You're late. Something came up? You need to drop the Z-Man. It's getting old.
Sorry, I got caught with something at the precinct on the way here. Had to attend to that first before things got out of hand. I'd tell you about it, but you know how it can be with those kinds of things. Later, maybe.
And you're here because...
What? I'm not allowed to say hello?
I doubt you're here because of that. And you're not answering my question.
My bad. Forgot to mention that. He called earlier looking for you. Rebecca's worried because you didn't come home last night.
You could have called my cell instead.
You weren't picking up. Anyway, I'd really hate to cut this little get-together short, but I need to be somewhere else. Come on, Isabella, let's get you home. I'll drop you off on the way.
Wait, we're going now?
He lightly claps a hand on her arm and begins ushering her out of the apartment, throwing an occasional wave at me as they pass. Isabella, on the other hand, doesn't appear too fond of this idea. And sure enough, before they can even cross the threshold, she puts a firm foot down. The force alone enough to halt them both and catch the taller man off guard. It would have made for a funny picture. The way Ash almost crashes into her and Isabella giving him an indignant pout over her shoulder. Surprise and confusion are in his face all at once. Two things that rarely ever grace it, if he can help it. A rare moment, even for our small group. If only I had my camera with me. Dang.
What is it?
Zach cooked something.
If it's just food, I'll get you something on the way back.
But the food! It's Zach's cooking! Real delicious food that actually tastes like food. At least stay and have a bite. Please? Zach, help me here!
These two, whenever they're in the same room, sometimes it feels like herding a group of unruly kids instead of talking to two mature adults. One moment they're engaged in a pleasant chit-chat, and the next they're bickering over a minor issue. Frankly, if I didn't know any better, and I have an overactive imagination, I'd say there's something going on. Never mind how utterly impossible that idea is. Or I might just be reading too much into things like always. I can already hear Ash's laughter, if I so much as suggest as such. This, however... I cooked up a feast.
I don't know about you two, but I think you guys should really stay. I've already made enough food for all of us, and it'd be a waste. Why, I cooked up that special honey-glazed ham you two keep on yapping about. Got some scalloped potatoes with onions and cheddar to go with it, too.
The oven timer dings. I shoot the two of them an apologetic look before sauntering over to the kitchen, mittens in hand. The sweet smell of the glaze and the salty tang of melted cheese wafts through the air as soon as I open the door and take out the two trays inside. The scent immediately fills the entire room, and even with the door and windows open, the mouth-watering aroma lingers. It's appealing enough that when I put the dishes down on the counter, another starved stomach protests loud, followed by a burst of laughter. My head snaps up at the two of them, and I can't keep back the smile at the sight they make. Isabella is clinging to the doorframe for support, doubled over with breathless laughter. Ash is the more composed of the two, trying to look unconcerned, but a flush has crept up his neck and cheeks. It's clear whose stomach that came from, and Isabella's not going to let him live this down.
You're in no place to reject an offer of free food, Frey.
I wasn't rejecting anything. Damn it, I just missed a meal, that's all.
Aw, he's flustered.
Shut it! Those guys at the precinct said it was urgent. Somebody has to be responsible for it.
Well, aren't you precious?
Right. You know, if you keep laughing like that, you'll burst.
I'm sure it won't be as bad as your stomach suddenly rumbling like a starved.
Aye, kiddos, play nice. Food's gonna get cold if we keep this up. Ash, you gonna stay?
Might as well, since Scaredy Cat's so hell-bent on staying.
We eventually settle down after the food has been served, the jibes replaced by another round of friendly chatter, mostly about what's been on the news the night before, hopefully no murders. There is, however, a conscious effort to avoid mentioning what's currently on the headlines. The dead is never a good topic to talk over food in polite company. This case in particular. The wounds are too fresh, too soon. I'd likely avoid it as well if I were in her position, and someone I personally knew passed away in a gruesome manner like that. Though perhaps the closest we got to broaching the topic is when the infamous mansion is brought up again. But even then, we are careful, Ash and I. We keep the conversation light and avoid bringing up her late business partner. It's the least we could do.
The Wrights? Yeah, they're planning to move in soon. In fact, they already have a housewarming party planned. It's why they wanted us to rush the papers. They wanted to send the invitations out as soon as possible.
Oh, now I get it.
Get what?
Remember what I told you last night about the new clients?
Vaguely? Sorry, I was a little out of it yesterday. Was it the photo shoot?
Yep, it's actually for the one you sold. Something. When you put it that way, I suppose it makes sense why my boss wants me to prioritize the couple. They can have those documents rushed at just a snap of their fingers. Then they're more influential than I initially thought. And I guess my boss is expecting a lot more from this project than I expected. Hope I can live up to it.
Your photographs are more than good enough, Zach. You'd probably win an international award if you let yourself. Ma'am Hana's easy to please, too. As long as you're good at following instructions.
Easier said than done. Different clients have different tastes, after all.
I think Hannah's tastes are you, Zach.
Still, a week? I don't think that's possible.
Now that you mentioned it, yeah. They wanted everything finished at the earliest. To be honest, it's not unheard of, but...
But it's still weird. Still weird, yeah?
A slip of the tongue. Still barely noticeable to someone who's already familiar with Ash's ways, yet in this moment it's impossible to miss. I shoot him a curious glance, but he ignores it. Rather pointedly.
I can't exactly say it's like that, where I'm just the middleman after all. As much as I want to comment on it, I only know what's on the surface, not the in and outs. It's just that BRC and my boss are more hands-on with the legal stuff this time, despite having a separate department dedicated to it.
Maybe Mr. Wright helped with it too. They have their own legal team for this, don't they?
Well, they should have one. Especially for a big property like this.
They have, but like I said, it's off our hands. Rose and I don't handle this stuff in the office. If anything, to me, this just means I'll be able to send the rest of the funds to Papa's treatment earlier.
I guess that makes a whole lot of sense. Officially off our instant noodle diet, aren't we?
Ash, has anyone ever told you that you have an uncanny way of ruining the mood?
What? I was just saying. A few more months of stuffing your face with those, and I'm sure you'll start to look like a noodle cup. That's a pretty picture.
At least I don't live off convenience store food. Or make poor, unassuming pressure cookers explode.
What? How did you... Oh, come on, Zach.
Sorry, it just came up while we were cooking earlier.
I'm impressed, Ashton Frey. You even made it to the news.
A one-time thing. And it wasn't as big as you seem to be imagining.
Oh, sure. Let's all pretend that one time you almost set my apartment on fire didn't happen too.
Hey, that was an accident.
You were making a salad, Ash.
Can we please move on to a different topic?
It helps, the casual talk, the harmless teasing, the mundane stories interesting enough to let time pass unnoticed. By the time lunch ends, the shadows are no longer at the forefront of my mind. It's the same for Isabella. If it's the same for Isabella, for whatever troubles her, I can never tell. These things, the anxiety, the fear, they ain't easily seen. They ain't easily forgotten after all.
You go on ahead. I've got a few things I need to ask Zach. I'll be downstairs in a minute.
Confusion briefly flashes in her eyes as she catches the keys he tossed over, but he doesn't give her an answer, and waves for her to go ahead.
How sure are you I won't be driving away with your Shirley?
You don't even have a license. Do you even know how to?
Papa taught me how. I'm probably a better driver than you. See you later, Zach. Thanks for the food.
Always has to have the last word, don't you?
You're welcome. I'll send you the recipe for the potatoes tonight.
Nice. A grin is back in her face when she leaves and closes the door behind her. For a little while after we are left alone, Ash goes wholly quiet, listening, waiting for her remaining footsteps in the hall to fade. The earlier amusement has gone from his face, replaced by what I can only describe as trepidation. I know that look all too well. When he's like this, he's expecting shit about to go down at some point soon.
That wasn't very nice, Ash. What was that with Isabella earlier? You're usually subtler with your questions.
They hired you.
Hired me who? Don't change the subject yet. What's really going on here?
The Wrights. Luke and Hannah Wright. You said your next gig is with them.
And?
Is that what this is all about?
Just be careful around them. You have no idea what you're dealing with when it comes to that couple. I'd rather you stay as far away from them as possible, but you're already here. Isabella's their real estate agent. Seriously, of all the people in Luxburn.
Okay. I guess I'll just have to take your word for it.
He nods, claps a comforting hand on my back, and turns to leave without another word. He's never been good with those. More often he fumbles with what he wants to say, but his actions alone are enough to tell me how grateful he is for the trust. He reaches for the knob as soon as he gets to the door, but he doesn't turn it. Instead, he looks back and gestures with his head towards the table. I don't need to follow his line of sight to know what he's going on about. He's likely taken notice of the moment he entered the room.
You back on those? I haven't seen you taking them in a year.
Yeah, I kinda had to. It got worse after the film fest. The dreams, that is. I don't think I'll be doing that again anytime soon.
Heard about that. Don't drop it, though. You don't want Becca scolding you. She actually enjoyed the movie you made, and she's hard to please. Consider that a small victory.
You don't have to tell me. She already did.
Yeah, man.
Rebecca and Bella both gave me an earful after I said the opposite. Promised them I wouldn't, but you can never tell. Hopefully, once I feel better, I'll be able to think about it properly. Speaking of Bella, she didn't open up to me, but maybe with you and Rebecca.
Yeah, I'll try. I can't promise anything, but I'll talk to her.
Thanks. That's all I'm asking.
This time when he reaches for the door, he lets it close fully behind him without glancing back. A mild draft sweeps into the room as I close the door as I close the door behind him, slightly disturbing the papers on the nearby fridge. A lone note flutters to my feet, the letters on the surface glaring at me with mute intensity. Ermengarde Mansion, H. Wright, 11 a.m. After Ashton's warning, they all hold a different meaning now. The next 2 days rush by in a blur, altogether leaving a collective mess of work suddenly piled up and new unexpected acquaintances, or friends. Depends on how you look at it, really. Either way, I'm stuck developing these photos at 3 in the morning to reach a deadline set by an overeager art director. Don't get me wrong, Julius is good. He has a vision and knows what he wants, but damn, he can be too enthusiastic sometimes.
Doesn't matter when you couldn't sleep anyway.
There's nothing new in it, of course. After years of working as a freelance photographer, it's simply something I've grown used to. Get to know people, build a client base, do good work, and cash in some late hours if need be. Rinse and repeat. It certainly takes a while to get some footing in the field, but it's the kind of thing that pays off in the long run, as long as you keep at it. Given enough time, you might end up with big names on your client list. Names like the Wrights in particular. I never did pay much attention to them, but it's virtually impossible not to hear about them when the local news channel or paper has something to say on their name. A party here, an acquisition there. Sometimes it's a new business venture, other times it's the everyday gossip that typically follows people like them. Not in a million years did I ever imagine I would end up working for such a high-profile couple. And between that and the fuss that comes with, it leaves me no time to ponder over whatever happened to Isabel or why Ash is so adamant we keep away from the pair.
They do seem like the good folk, though, despite the whole fame thing.
Sure, there was a rumor running around years ago about him being involved in some business scandal. But, just like every gossip blown out of proportion by the media, nothing came of it, and eventually it simply died down. Much is definitely left to be said for the husband, but I doubt a woman like Mrs. Wright would pick him if he doesn't have any good points at all. Mrs. Wright, Hannah herself though, she ain't particularly bad the way the press makes her out to be. Well, the press don't like her, huh? The tabloids had it all wrong, that's for sure. For someone born with a silver spoon in her mouth, well, she ain't exactly what I was expecting. Among other things, the newfound friendship is what I least expected from her, but here we are. Although, with a life as public as the Wrights, no wonder it's the woman who often gets the crappy end of the stick. I can't help but feel sorry for her. She's a real nice person when given the chance. Heck, she might have even ended up as friends with Rebecca and Isabella too, if they weren't living worlds apart. Well, you wouldn't know, but she knows Rebecca too. Probably. The beep quickly pulls me back before my thoughts travel any further. In one practiced motion, I carefully place the wet print I'm holding on a dryer rack and amble over to my makeshift darkroom to get the last photos from the water bath. Inside the converted broom closet, the film processor lets out another soft clack before going on its standby mode. At its mouth, a lone photograph sits on the tray, barely visible with the lack of light. It's the last one, tonight, for the set Mrs. Wright requested. I don't usually make this a habit, giving away stuff that is. It's bad for business no matter how well-intentioned or generous you are. This exception, however, she did treat me well, and was a pleasant companion all throughout the shoot. Even if she didn't ask, I would have probably given her a few prints just for the hell of it. Mrs. Wright ain't such a bad subject matter to begin with. And maybe this is just me, but for someone who has everything on the palm of her hands, all the money in the world, a loving husband, that's arguable, and a plenty big mansion to call home, she's lonely. She doesn't just appear like it. It shows in the tone of her voice, how she moves, and most certainly in her smiles. Of course she's lonely. She lives in a giant house with two people who can't stand each other, or don't seem to be able to stand each other. Always hidden behind the glamour for the world to never see. Sometimes for people like her, small things like these help. A little reminder that the world can be kind too. Water drips from the paper as I blindly pick it up and gently lay it on another tray, holding a decent amount of photo flow. A few seconds under the solution is all it's need before it's ready for drying. No good rushing this last one, even if my body's already screaming for a decent snooze. My hand fumbles for the light switch, moving toward it with familiarity, while I fish for a squeegee among the mess of tools in my drawer with the other. The bulb flickers twice before its glow settles and casts a soft light in the tiny space, and I glance back down, squeegee in hand, ready to finish the process and finally call it a night. Oh, don't let me... When you took a photo of her in the foyer, when she had the monster behind her that came up in the picture?
What on earth?
Kind of. Her head is gone. Blurred and distorted beyond recognition, rather. The area completely smudged over, leaving no trace of the same sweet smile the good woman carried in all the previous prints.
Damn, that was too careless.
A common mistake to make, of course, if one is negligent enough to pick a newly processed photo in the dark, like I apparently did. It has happened before, loads of times actually, but I still can't help but feel a small pang of frustration over one mistake a newbie would likely make. With a sigh, I reach up for the switch again, intending to develop a new one from scratch.
It could pass off for one of those supernatural pictures they show on TV, though.
A memory clicks. One cursory thought in the sea of many, and a short yet distinct second from the day before. Yeah, she freaked out because the monster was behind her at that moment. A glimpse is all I got, but it's enough to burn the image into my mind. There was a shadow. No. A woman. In her 20s or early 30s maybe? But with how far gone her flesh alone has become, it's not possible to tell at first glance. Her skin itself has already taken a sickly pale colour, rotten in most parts, blood dripping from every open gash and lesion on her body. Bony hands grip Mrs. Wright's neck like a noose, straining the skin underneath with a vibrant shade of scarlet. Nothing but malice fills the gleam in her eyes.
Zachary?
Not for me, but for Mrs. Wright.
Zach, is something the matter?
Oh no, there's nothing wrong. I just remembered something, that's all. Let's get back to the pictures. Can you move a bit more to the left, yeah?
The memory alone is enough to make me retch. I brushed it off then. A trick of the eye, I told myself, or a product of the heat. The weather has been unexpectedly warm recently, so it shouldn't be too surprising for such things to happen. And, well, blaming this on the usual fatigue, an overworked brain, the weather, or an amateur error on my part is far more convenient. It makes a whole lot of sense than what the small voice inside my head whispers. The same tiny voice that only makes itself known when something's afoul. The same one that lent a curious ear to Isabella's worries about the mansion. And with each second I spend staring at this photograph, the murmurs in my head only grow louder against my ears. Someone has to know. Oh shit, we can't show it to Hannah. Ash. Ash will give me flack for this. He will. I can imagine what Hannah would say. There's a picture of her. I can already hear what he's going to say about this the moment I bring it up. Hell, before he even sees anything, I'll wager the guy's a skeptic through and through. It'll take more than my account for him to even consider this. But when you've been there, seen something enough to raise the hairs at the back of your neck and leave you wanting to flee or hide, what he thinks is the least of my concerns. I'm no hero. That's a title best reserved for someone else. Still, if this will help him change his mind, it's worth a try. Isabella's gone, and done the same thing, didn't she? Outside, the sun is yet to rise. I've still got a few hours before dawn. Good enough time to mull over how I'll go about this with him. Plenty of space to check if I'll get the same result if I redo the process again. The film processor hums back to life at my touch. The light switch gives off a soft click, and darkness embraces the small closet again.
Somehow those urban legends don't sound so silly now.
Sometimes I wish Ash would make himself easier to find. 24 messages, 13 phone calls, and one visit to his flat later, I still have no idea which rock in Luxbourne he went off to hide under. The guy has his own place, but refuses to stay in it. He has his own phone, but doesn't answer any of his calls or give any indication he's gotten my messages. Most of the time he'll just show up on my front door. Sometimes in the middle of the night, complaining how uncomfortable it is to sleep at the back of his Shirley, his car. As if the old couch in my flat is any better. Nothing new from him though, but a bit frustrating really. There's the police precinct, of course. And then again, he's not there most of the time either. And if that's also true for today, he's likely out on another stakeout. There's nothing much to do for me but wait, if that's the case.
Let's just hope I'm lucky enough today.
While Luxbourne is a relatively peaceful city, boasting a low crime rate, its precinct stays abuzz with activity. As soon as I open the glass front doors, murmurs come from the people waiting in the lobby, welcome me. Officers can occasionally be seen shuffling in and out of the rooms, greeting civilians with a casual smile and a polite nod. Some, though, look a little worse for wear, like the receptionist, who looked at me with much disdain the moment I arrived. Thankfully, I won't have to deal with him today. Before I can even step in, Ashton's voice, though low, comes to the hallway adjacent to the lobby.
Not even for just 1 minute?
No. The case was dismissed, remember?
You were the one handling that case.
If you want access to those records, you've got to ask Chief. I was taken off it before shit went to hell. Why do you even bother? Even Professor Clark seems to have given up on that.
Well, Never mind, you won't understand.
Right. I know you owe Professor Clark a lot, but the right guy isn't just someone you mess with. They've got the money. Who knows what else gets swept under the rug with them involved.
That takes a special kind of ignorant not to know.
And a smart person to know which boundaries he can't cross. You're a bright guy, you'll figure it out. In any case, I've got to get going. Another missing person case on my hand. Benjamin on the front desk looks like he's about to maul someone after the fourth one yesterday. Murders, people missing, what a time to be alive. Man, I miss the old Luxbourne.
You and me both. I'll see you. Gonna go grab some lunch.
He notices me first, as soon as he enters the lobby and pauses. Confusion briefly crosses his face until I fish out the phone from my pocket and wave it up. Frowning, he pulls his own mobile out, wordlessly fiddling with it for a few seconds before sighing heavily. There ain't any annoyance in him when he glances up, though. Only mild exasperation and what might be a hint of amusement.
Stop taking pointers from Isabella. This is gonna get old soon.
At least use your phone properly.
It's an alarm clock, a good note-taking device, a halfway decent camera, and maybe a music player too. If I'm being nice. What else do I need it for?
I don't know, keeping in contact maybe?
When he merely shrugs, I know I've struck a chord. He's far from holding a piece of technology in contempt, of course. Ash has always been nothing but practical from the start, and technology is useful. Only when he gets too focused on one thing, like the case he's handling, he tends to forget there are other things around him. A little reminder and a nudge in the right direction can get him a long way.
I've got an email on that social media site the girls roped us into joining.
That doesn't make any sense. Also, you've got an account before any of us had one.
For policing purposes?
For sure.
Anyway, why are you here? I thought you have something scheduled today. Or was that yesterday?
That was yesterday. Look, about that, there's something I want you to see.
He stops me with a tap on my shoulder, walks past me straight to the door, and gestures with his head toward their very irked receptionist when I raise an eyebrow in question.
Over lunch. I haven't eaten anything since last night, and Benjamin there doesn't really like loiterers around here.
Wordlessly, I follow after him, but not after sending the poor guy behind the table an apologetic smile. As expected, he takes a seat in the furthest corner of the cafe, a good way from the window, but easily allows for a view of who comes and goes. Secluded enough not to be disturbed by the lunch hour rush or be overheard by a curious bystander. If I didn't know this is lunch he invited me to, I would have automatically assumed I got dragged into another stakeout. After years of knowing him though, this has simply become one of the many habits he's gotten used to. Food arrives minutes later. A slice of their vegetarian quiche for me. Meanwhile, Ashton has opted for a cup of coffee, plus a gracious serving of...
You having cake for lunch?
He shrugs and then proceeds to dig in without even a hint of remorse. Frankly, it's like seeing a child get his Christmas present early.
Don't tell Becca. I'll get an earful. It's just for today.
You should listen to her, though. The kind of work you do, you'll need to eat something other than sweets. I don't want to see you drop dead in front of my apartment again.
I told you, just this once. Have you been hanging out with Becca lately? You're beginning to sound like her.
Nah, just for some recipes. But she has the right to worry, you know? It's like she's taking care of 2 kids. One bitches on sweets, while the other on cup noodles.
I feel like cup noodles is more responsible.
At least Bella knows how to cook.
Hey, I can at least boil something. Wait, that's easy, right? I mean, you just put water in and...
No, don't even think about it. You destroyed your own kitchen once by sticking a pressure cooker on it. I think my sister is a whole lot better than you. And this is coming from someone who has no other choice but to eat her cooking for some time.
To be fair, he genuinely appears offended at the last remark. Hate would be too strong of a word to describe how Sis and him usually interact whenever they're in the same room. Though whatever appropriate word it is, I can say it with most certainty that the feelings are mutual for both. Ash thinks she nags too much, while Sis thinks he's a trouble magnet I should stay away from. They're both technically right on their assessments.
How's your sister, by the way? Still bullying white guys?
What should I say? You're the one who started it?
You do realize you're the one who started it.
Yeah, well, your sister tried to poison me with her cooking.
Like you can cook better.
My cooking has never killed people.
Your brand of cooking mostly involves throwing things into a pot and hoping it never explodes.
I'm never going to live that one down, am I?
No.
It was in the news. Did you know Nana and Gran called me that night just to check if you're still alive?
And they were genuinely concerned. They've always been. In some unspoken agreement, my grandparents has adopted him into the family. A nice gesture, and I don't think he minds at all. He'd even ask about them from time to time, checking on their well-being. I think part of him misses his own family, the one he'll never get back, and though he won't say it out loud, he appreciates having one thing close to it. It makes him feel less alone. Who wouldn't? And yet...
You should drop by sometime. Nana's request. She wants to see whether that skinny boy has somehow gained some muscle.
I'll see what I can do.
Sometimes he neglects the more important things.
Ash?
Some other time, Zach. Things are a bit hectic at the moment.
Even for just a day? Psh, come on, Ash.
You saw how things are at the precinct. Even Benjamin's at his wit's end.
He's quick to avoid my eyes, swiftly turning his attention back on his plate. The food, however, remains uneaten. He's put up a wall again. I can't remember the last time he did that, but watching it happen in front of me is disconcerting. It ain't an excuse, I know that. His job is never as easy as those television shows often imply. Lots of bureaucracy and red tape involved. If he's lucky, they'll find an easy lead, close the case after several months of no sleep and pure hard work. But most of the time, it's just one pile of reports after the next, one frustration after another. I just wish he'd stop focusing on it too much and see what he's missing out on for once.
You really can't make time for it?
I can't just leave this case for now. Sorry.
His change in tone is subtle, but the aggravation over the matter hangs completely palpable in the air.
Still no closer?
The opposite, actually. There's been some slip-ups here and there. Careless mistakes, and let's just say I'm waiting for him to make another one. What about you? How are things on your end?
All piled up on top of the other. But I can manage. Still recovering from the expenses for the movie, so the surge in new projects helps. Well, there's this one thing.
The expression on his face grows more puzzled with each photo I spread out on the table. There's about 8 of them, all of it reprints of the same thing. Mrs. Wright's distorted head on the photos. It takes a minute to go through each, eyeing the prints warily. The furrow on his brow doesn't ease even as he gathers all of it into one pile and sets them in one neat stack in front of me with a heavy sigh.
Hannah Wright?
Yeah. How did you...
The locket. She never takes it off. Evan's family heirloom.
I won't even think about asking why or how he knows that. If he's investigating them, he'd likely already have dug up every unimaginable dirt on them, including family history.
Are you done with your work with them?
Yesterday, yeah. It's just a small feature for a magazine. Interviews, photos, standard stuff, nothing big. But see, here's the thing. I don't know how else to put this out there without sounding crazy, but there really is something odd with that place. Remember the letter?
He drags in a breath, reaches up to his nose and pinches it, like the action alone will help him grant all the patience in the world to continue this conversation.
Please tell me this isn't about that again.
No, Ash, you've got to listen this time.
I am listening, and I can't believe that just came out of your mouth. These are some blurred out photos, and that letter is just a stupid prank. I expected this from Isabella, not you. You're the photographer here. I don't see any need to get worked up over this.
I know what you mean, but would you hear me out first?
Ash leans back in his seat and doesn't say anything further. He gestures for me to continue with a wave of his hands, impatience clearly on his face. Any other person telling him this, and he'll walk out without batting an eye. I suppose the only reason he's given me the benefit of the doubt is because we know each other.
Ash, I don't easily buy into these things as much as you do. Yesterday, though, behind Hannah.
He blinks at that, his eyebrows lifting momentarily before setting the cup into a deep frown.
Hannah? Since when were you on a first-name basis with the Wright missus?
Why does that even matter?
I thought you said this was just a gig.
His voice stays level, but the accusation in it is as clear as day. It hits a nerve with me somehow, more than that tone usually does. I do get where he's coming from, but it's not the point. Of all the things I said, my connection to the Wrights is the first thing he points out. As much as I want to keep my own annoyance at bay, I can't stop it from seeping into my voice.
That's completely beside the point here, Ash.
I warned you, Zach.
I get it, alright? But you can't just expect me to turn it down after I made a commitment to a client. I've got to put food on my table.
I didn't say you shouldn't, but you should not be messing with them.
I wasn't messing with them.
And this isn't?
He waves the photos in front of me before dropping the pile on the table with a loud smack. I don't need to look to know we've already attracted some attention from the lunchtime crowd. Besides, turning away from him feels almost the same as admitting he's right. There are things more important than this damn case right now. I wish he'd see that.
It was a job, and that ain't how these photos were intended to come out. You think I'd go out of my way just to edit something like this? There's something weird going on here.
And you think Luke Wright will see it that way? You think the Wright missus will find it amusing?
I did not do this for my amusement, Ash. People's lives might be at stake here.
If you understood that in the first place, we wouldn't be having this stupid talk. Luke fucking Wright is a dangerous man, Zach. Keep hanging around them and you'll find yourself burnt to a crisp in your apartment or floating down a river 3 days later. This case is...
Will you stop talking about the damn case for once and just listen to me? Why do you think Isabella's...
Don't you dare bring her into this. We're talking about you and this stupid...
Oh, of course you don't want to talk about it. Because you're fucking afraid there's some damn truth to what she's saying now that there's 2 of us.
Every expression drains from his face as soon as the words are out of my mouth. They've hit their mark. Each utterance scathes, sharp with nothing but anger and the truth. And yet, these are the things that I won't typically say out loud in good company, and rather ease people into it before letting it fall. Almost immediately, a wave of regret washes over me.
Ash, dude, that ain't what I meant to.
You said enough, Zach.
Without another word, he stands, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. All while my brain races to find something to fix this. Ours ain't a fragile friendship by any means. I like to think we've gone past the stage where we find everything the other says insulting. But there are times when letters and phrases alone can cut deeper than any blade. Mine might even leave a scar. He doesn't let me, however. Instead, he sets a card in front of me. The name is familiar, but amidst the cloud of remorse and swirling inside my head, I can't bring myself to recall where I've seen it.
You shouldn't be running blind. Call this guy. He'll be less inclined to shout at you. Might even talk some sense into you.
I don't see his face when he leaves, and it's only when the store's bell chimes again do I breathe. Alright, we better wrap this one up. That did not go well. Man, he is a stubborn motherfucker, isn't he? Like, it's one thing to be like, you know, to be apprehensive or disbelieving, but it's another to be so aggressive about it. Jesus. To say, I don't believe in that bullshit or something. You don't have to go fucking psycho. It makes it sound like you do believe it, and you're just scared to admit it, or something like that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.